The courtroom doors slam shut, a hush falling over the packed gallery as sunlight slices through heavy drapes, spotlighting Olivia Grant. Her brown eyes burn with defiance. A black woman accused of assaulting a cop. Officer Daniel Harper, smug in his crisp uniform, smirking like he's already won, whispers ripple. How dare she challenge him? But Olivia's calm masks a secret, a truth that could shatter Harper's lies. Why does a decorated Air Force colonel stand accused? What power does she hold to unravel a system built on prejudice? One question lingers, electrifying the air: who will break first? Dive into this gripping tale of justice and resilience. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that ignite your soul. Hit the bell, don't miss the truth unfolding. The early morning sun pierced through the heavy velvet drapes of the courtroom, casting long, jagged shadows across the polished mahogany floor. The air was thick, oppressive. Despite the grandeur of the high-ceilinged chamber, rows of wooden benches brimmed with spectators, reporters scribbling furiously, townsfolk whispering with curiosity, and a few faces etched with quiet tension. At the defense table, Olivia Grant, 38, sat with a spine as straight as a steel rod, her hands clasped tightly. Her rich brown skin glowed faintly under the fluorescent lights, her curly hair pulled into a neat bun. Dressed in a crisp navy blazer and white blouse, she exuded understated confidence. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, noting every detail: the fidgeting juror, the smug glance of her accuser, the hum of anticipation. Olivia was no ordinary woman, though her appearance gave little away. There was a quiet power in her stillness, a coiled strength in her controlled movements. To the casual observer, she was just another black woman facing serious charges, resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. But a question hung in the air, unspoken yet palpable. How could someone like her dare challenge a seasoned police officer? The sharp rap of Judge Clara Thompson's gavel cut through the murmurs, commanding silence. A stern woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and piercing gray eyes. She carried an authority honed by decades on the bench. The case of the state versus Olivia Grant, the bailiff announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Olivia rose, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Whispers rippled through the crowd as spectators craned their necks for a better view. At the plaintiff's table, Officer Daniel Harper, 42, lounged with a confidence bordering on arrogance. His police uniform was immaculate, his posture relaxed, a faint smirk playing on his lips. His blue eyes glinted with the certainty of a man rarely questioned. He glanced at Olivia, his gaze dripping with condescension, as if the trial's outcome was a foregone conclusion. Harper was the kind of officer who thrived on unchallenged authority, but today he was oblivious to the storm brewing before him. Olivia's lawyer, Marcus Lee, 29, a young black attorney with a fire in his eyes but a nervous edge, shuffled through his notes. His tie was slightly askew, his hands betraying a slight tremor as he glanced at Olivia, seeking reassurance. She offered a subtle nod, her gaze fixed on the judge. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice catching briefly. "We are ready to proceed." Judge Thompson nodded, her expression unreadable. "Officer Harper, take the stand." Harper strode forward, each step a performance. He adjusted his uniform with a flourish, flashed a charming smile to the jury, and swore the oath with practiced ease. Olivia watched him closely, cataloging the details others missed. The slight twitch of his fingers, the way his eyes darted to his fellow officers in the back row for approval. She remained still, her face a mask of calm, but inside, she was mapping his every move. Harper settled into the witness chair, his voice booming with authority. "On the evening of April 12th, I responded to a disturbance call in the West District. I found the defendant, Ms. Grant, loitering outside a shuttered storefront." The word loitering landed like a stone, laced with insinuation, especially for a black woman. Murmurs stirred the crowd. Harper pressed on, his tone growing theatrical. "When I asked for her identification, she got hostile, raised her voice, refused to comply. I tried to de-escalate, but she lashed out, struck me in the chest, and reached for my service weapon." Gasps erupted. A woman in the back muttered, "That's a lie." Judge Thompson's gavel slammed down. "Order." Harper leaned back, feigning a wince of pain. I had no choice but to restrain her. Marcus rose, his voice unsteady but determined. Your Honor, we request to save it for cross-examination, Mr. Lee, the judge cut in, her tone sharp. Harper sauntered back to his seat, tossing a triumphant grin at his colleagues, who nodded in solidarity. Olivia leaned toward Marcus, her voice a low whisper. He's overplaying his hand. Let him. Marcus nodded, though his eyes betrayed his nerves. You sure about this, Olivia? Her lips curved faintly. I face worse than him. Stay sharp, Marcus. The prosecutor, James Whitaker, a lean man in his 40s with a tailored suit and a voice like a blade, stood. Officer Harper, can you clarify the defendant's demeanor when you approached her? Harper leaned forward, his tone dripping with conviction. She was defiant from the start, kept questioning me like she was above the law. I gave her every chance to cooperate, but she chose violence. Whitaker nodded, turning to the jury. And you felt threatened? Absolutely, Harper said, his voice hardening. When someone goes for your weapon, you don't take chances. The courtroom buzzed. Olivia's composure never wavered, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire. Marcus scribbled notes, muttering under his breath. He's laying it on thick. Olivia's voice was barely audible. Too thick. He's setting himself up. Judge Thompson's gaze shifted to Olivia. Ms. Grant, you may take the stand. Olivia rose, smoothing her blazer, and walked to the witness stand with the precision of a soldier. The room fell silent, the weight of 100 stairs pressing down. She adjusted the microphone, her movements slow, deliberate. Whitaker approached, his smile sharp. Miss Grant, let's hear your side. Explain your actions that night. Olivia leaned forward, her voice steady, resonant. I will, but first, let me be clear. Officer Harper's story isn't just wrong, it's a deliberate lie. A collective gasp swept the room. Whitaker's smile faltered. Bolt claimed Ms. Grant. Not any proof. Her eyes locked onto his. Unyielding. The truth has a way of surfacing, counselor. You'll see. Whitaker recovered, his tone mocking. Enlighten us then. What happened? Olivia's gaze swept the jury. Her words measured but powerful. That night, I was walking home after visiting a colleague. I stopped at the corner of Elm and 7th to check my phone for directions. That's when Officer Harper approached. Whitaker pounced. So you admit you were standing there, alone at night? I was on a public sidewalk. Olivia countered, her voice firm. Last I checked, that's not a crime. The jury shifted, intrigued. Whitaker pressed. And when the officer asked for your ID? He didn't ask, Olivia said, her tone cutting. He demanded it, shining a flashlight in my face, barking at me like I'd already done something wrong. Harper shifted in his seat, his smirk fading. Whitaker raised an eyebrow. So you challenged him? I asked a question, Olivia corrected. I said, have I broken any laws, officer? He didn't like that. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Judge Thompson's gavel tapped lightly. Order. Olivia continued, her voice unwavering. He accused me of being uncooperative. I told him I wasn't causing trouble, but before I could say more, he grabbed my arm hard. The room tensed. Whitaker smirked. You're saying he restrained you without cause? Yes, Olivia said, her eyes never leaving his. I told him to let go. He tightened his grip and said, people like you need to learn respect. Gasps erupted. The judge's gavel slammed. Silence. Whitaker's smile wavered. That's a serious accusation, Ms. Grant. Any evidence for this? Olivia's gaze flicked to Harper, who was now visibly tense. His body camera would have shown it, but it conveniently malfunctioned, didn't it, Officer Harper? All eyes turned to Harper. His jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. Whitaker cleared his throat. Let's move on. What happened next? I told him I didn't consent to being touched, Olivia said, her voice like steel. He accused me of resisting, though I hadn't moved. When I tried to pull my arm free, he slammed me against his patrol car. The crowd murmured, anger flickering in their eyes. Whitaker's voice softened, probing. Miss Grant, you're a strong woman. Could the officer have felt threatened? Olivia's eyes narrowed. I'm no stronger than a trained officer. I didn't resist until he violated my rights. And I never reached for his weapon. That's a fabrication to justify his actions. The room seemed to hold its breath. Harper's face glistened with sweat. Whitaker struggled to regain control. You're asking us to believe a decorated officer made it all up. Olivia's smile was faint but lethal. I'm asking you to believe the truth, counselor. And it's coming faster than you think. Marcus stood, his voice steadier. Your Honor, we'll present further evidence tomorrow. Whitaker scoffed. Stalling, Your Honor. Olivia faced the judge, her voice resolute. The truth takes time, Your Honor, but when it breaks through, no one will deny it. Judge Thompson studied her, then nodded. Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow. The gavel struck and the room erupted in whispers. Olivia stepped down, passing Harper, who avoided her gaze. Marcus whispered, "You're playing a dangerous game, Olivia." She placed a hand on his arm. "It's no game, Marcus. Tomorrow we bring down his house of lies." Outside, the sunset bathed the town in gold. Olivia stood on the courthouse steps, her silhouette strong against the fading light. The fight was far from over, but she was ready, always had been. The courtroom doors swung open the next morning, admitting a flood of spectators that filled the benches to capacity. The air crackled with anticipation, the weight of yesterday's testimony still lingering like a storm cloud. Reporters clutched notepads, their pens poised. Townsfolk whispered theories about Olivia Grant's calm defiance. And Officer Daniel Harper's colleagues, seated in the back row, exchanged uneasy glances. The hum of conversation died as Judge Clara Thompson's gavel struck, her silver hair glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Order," she commanded, her gray eyes sweeping the room. "We resume the case of the state versus Olivia Grant." Olivia sat at the defense table, her navy blazer crisp, her posture unyielding. Her brown eyes were sharp, scanning the room with the precision of a hawk. Beside her, Marcus Lee, her young lawyer, gripped a stack of notes, his earlier nerves tempered by a growing resolve. He leaned toward her, voice low. "You rattled them yesterday, Olivia. Harper's on edge. What's our next move?" She met his gaze, her voice steady. "We widen the cracks, Marcus. Let his lies collapse under their own weight." Across the room, Harper sat rigid at the plaintiff's table, his police uniform no longer a shield of authority but a spotlight on his unease. The smirk he'd worn yesterday was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped grimace. His fingers drummed faintly on the table, a nervous tic betraying the pressure building within. He avoided Olivia's gaze, but she didn't need to look at him to know he was unraveling. Prosecutor James Whitaker stood, his tailored suit as sharp as his tone, though a faint strain undercut his confidence. "Your Honor," he began, "we call Officer Harper to clarify his testimony." Harper rose, his steps heavier than the day before, as if the weight of scrutiny pressed down on him. He took the stand, adjusting the microphone with a trembling hand. Whitaker approached, his voice measured. "Officer Harper, Ms. Grant has accused you of fabricating the events of April 12th. Can you reaffirm your account?" Harper cleared his throat, his voice strained but defiant. "I stand by what I said. She was hostile, refused to comply, and reached for my weapon. I acted to protect myself and maintain order." Whitaker nodded, turning to the jury. "And her claim that you restrained her without cause. She's twisting the truth," Harper said, his eyes flicking to the jury. "She challenged me from the start, questioning my authority, raising her voice. I had to take control of the situation." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Olivia's expression remained impassive, but her fingers tightened briefly on the table, a fleeting sign of the fire within. Marcus whispered, "He's doubling down." "Let him," Olivia replied softly. "The higher he builds his lies, the harder they fall." Whitaker pressed, sensing the jury's attention. "Officer, you mentioned her reaching for your weapon. Describe that moment." Harper leaned forward, his voice hardening as he tried to regain ground. "She lunged toward my side, her hand inches from my holster. I grabbed her arm to stop her. It was instinct." Gasps echoed from the gallery. A woman in the crowd muttered, "That's not what she said." Judge Thompson's gavel tapped sharply. "Quiet." Whitaker turned to the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." Marcus stood, his tie now straight, his voice steady with newfound confidence. "Your Honor, permission to cross-examine." "Granted," Judge Thompson said, her eyes narrowing as she watched Harper. Marcus approached the stand, his steps deliberate, his gaze locked on Harper. "Officer Harper," he began, his tone calm but edged with steel, "you claim Ms. Grant reached for your weapon. Yet you've provided no evidence, no fingerprints, no footage, no witnesses. Just your word. Correct?" Harper's jaw tightened. "That's correct. It happened fast." Marcus nodded, pacing slowly before the jury. "Fast, but not too fast for you to notice her hand inches from your holster. Tell me, how often do you face such a threat in your 12 years on the force?" Not often, Harper admitted, his voice quieter. But it happens. And your body camera, Marcus continued, his tone sharpening, which you claim malfunctioned during this critical moment. How many times has it failed during an arrest? Harper shifted, his eyes darting to Whitaker for rescue. It's rare. But it happened that night. Rare, Marcus echoed, turning to the jury. Convenient, wouldn't you say? A malfunction at the exact moment you allege a violent assault by a woman who, by all accounts, was simply standing on a sidewalk. The crowd buzzed. Harper's face flushed, his composure slipping. Equipment fails sometimes, he snapped. I don't control that. Marcus stopped pacing, facing Harper directly. But you control your actions, don't you? You chose to grab her arm, to slam her against your car, to accuse her of crimes she didn't commit. Why? I was doing my job. Harper's voice rose, cracking under the pressure. She was defiant, uncooperative. Uncooperative. Marcus cut in, his voice rising to match. Or did she simply ask you a question you didn't like? Have I broken any laws? That's what she said, isn't it? Harper opened his mouth, then closed it, his silence deafening. The jury leaned forward, their eyes narrowing. Marcus pressed. You didn't like being questioned, so you escalated. You wanted control, didn't you? Whitaker shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Speculative. Sustained, Judge Thompson said, though her gaze lingered on Harper, heavy with suspicion. Marcus stepped back, his voice softening but no less piercing. No further questions. Harper stepped down, his shoulders slumping as he returned to his seat. His colleagues in the back row avoided his gaze, their earlier solidarity fraying. Olivia leaned toward Marcus, her voice a whisper. Good. He's rattled. Now we push. The judge's voice cut through the tension. Ms. Grant, you may resume your testimony. Olivia rose, her presence commanding as she walked to the stand. The room fell silent, every eye on her. She sat, adjusting the microphone with the same precision she'd shown yesterday, her posture radiating strength. Whitaker approached, his smile forced. Ms. Grant, you've made serious accusations against Officer Harper. Let's revisit your version of events. You claim you were simply checking your phone. Yes, Olivia said, her voice clear, unwavering. I was confirming directions home after visiting a colleague. And when the officer approached, Whitaker asked, his tone skeptical. He didn't approach, Olivia said, her eyes locking onto his. He confronted me, flashlight in my face, demanding my ID with no explanation. I asked if I'd done anything wrong. Whitaker smirked. So you admit you questioned his authority? I questioned his reasoning, Olivia corrected, her voice firm. I wasn't breaking any laws. I had a right to know why he was targeting me. The jury exchanged glances, intrigued. Whitaker pressed. And when he asked for your ID again? I repeated my question. Olivia said. That's when he got angry. Accused me of not cooperating, and grabbed my arm. The crowd murmured. Whitaker's smile tightened. You expect us to believe a trained officer restrained you for no reason? I expect you to believe the truth, Olivia said, her gaze unyielding. He said, people like you need to learn respect. Then he tightened his grip when I asked him to let go. Gasps rippled through the room. Judge Thompson's gavel struck. Order. Whitaker's voice hardened. You're claiming he used those exact words? Without evidence. Olivia's eyes flicked to Harper, who was now visibly sweating. His body camera would have recorded it, but it malfunctioned. Ask him why. Harper shifted, his knuckles white on the table. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Whitaker tried to pivot. What happened next, Ms. Grant? I told him I didn't consent to being touched, Olivia said, her voice like a blade. He accused me of resisting, though I hadn't moved. When I tried to pull my arm free, he slammed me against his car and cuffed me, claiming I assaulted him. The room tensed, anger flickering in the spectators' eyes. Whitaker's tone softened, probing. Ms. Grant, could your actions have seemed threatening? I was calm, Olivia said, her voice steady. I'm trained to stay composed under pressure. I didn't threaten him, I challenged his abuse of power. Whitaker faltered, then recovered. Trained? You're a civilian, Ms. Grant. What training? Olivia's lips curved faintly, a spark of defiance in her eyes. The kind that teaches you to stand your ground, counselor. You'll learn more soon enough. The jury leaned forward, sensing a shift. Marcus stood, his voice ringing with purpose. Your Honor. We have evidence to present tomorrow that will clarify Ms. Grant's account. Whitaker scoffed. More delays, Your Honor. Olivia faced the judge, her voice resolute. The truth doesn't rush, Your Honor, but when it arrives, it speaks louder than any lie. Judge Thompson studied her, then nodded. Court is adjourned until tomorrow, 9 a.m. The gavel struck and the room erupted in murmurs. Olivia stepped down, passing Harper, whose eyes were fixed on the floor. Marcus whispered, "You're playing with fire, Olivia." She smiled faintly. "Fire's my element, Marcus. Tomorrow, we burn his lies to ash." The courthouse loomed under a pale dawn sky, its stone facade casting long shadows over the swelling crowd gathered on the steps. News of Olivia Grant's trial had spread like wildfire, drawing reporters with flashing cameras, townsfolk clutching coffee cups, and activists holding signs demanding justice. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with electric tension, the air thick with anticipation. Every bench was packed, spectators leaning forward, their whispers a low hum that pulsed through the room. The back row where Officer Daniel Harper's colleagues sat was noticeably quieter, their faces tight with unease, their once solid support for him fraying at the edges. Olivia sat at the defense table, her navy blazer impeccable, her posture as unyielding as ever. Her brown eyes were sharp, scanning the room with a quiet intensity that seemed to command the space. Beside her, Marcus Lee, his tie now perfectly knotted, flipped through his notes with a steady hand. The nervous young lawyer from 2 days ago was gone, replaced by a man fueled by purpose. He leaned toward Olivia, his voice low but urgent. "This is it, Olivia. Harper's on the ropes. What's our play?" Her lips curved into a faint, resolute smile. "We don't just knock him down, Marcus. We dismantle his entire facade. Today, the truth takes center stage." Across the room, Harper sat at the plaintiff's table, his police uniform no longer a symbol of authority but a weight dragging him down. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead. His hands gripped the table's edge, knuckles white, as if holding himself together by sheer will. The confident smirk he'd worn on the first day was a distant memory, replaced by a hunted look. He avoided Olivia's gaze, but her presence loomed over him like a storm cloud ready to break. Judge Clara Thompson entered, her silver hair catching the light as she took her seat. Her gray eyes surveyed the room, sensing the charged atmosphere. The gavel struck, sharp and commanding. "Court is now in session," she declared. "We continue with the case of the state versus Olivia Grant. Mr. Whitaker, does the prosecution have anything further?" Prosecutor James Whitaker rose, his tailored suit pristine but his posture betraying a crack in his usual confidence. His voice, though steady, carried a faint strain. "Your Honor, we call Officer Harper to the stand to address inconsistencies in the defendant's testimony." Harper stood, his movements stiff as if each step to the witness stand was a march to his own reckoning. He adjusted the microphone with trembling fingers, his eyes darting to the jury, then to his colleagues, who offered no reassurance. Whitaker approached, his tone measured but pressing. "Officer Harper, Ms. Grant has accused you of lying about the events of April 12th. Can you reaffirm your account for the jury?" Harper cleared his throat, his voice hoarse, lacking its earlier bravado. "Yes. She was aggressive, refused to identify herself, and reached for my weapon. I acted within my duty to protect myself and the public." Whitaker nodded, turning to the jury with a forced smile. "And her claim that you restrained her without cause, that you used derogatory language." Harper's eyes flickered with panic, but he steadied himself. "She's lying. She challenged me, raised her voice, made me feel threatened. I never said anything like what she claims." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Olivia's expression remained stone cold, but her fingers tightened briefly on the table, a spark of controlled fury. Marcus whispered, "He's digging deeper. Let him bury himself," Olivia replied, her voice a low growl. Whitaker pressed, sensing the jury's skepticism. "Officer, describe the moment she allegedly reached for your weapon. Be specific." Harper leaned forward, his voice rising as he tried to reclaim control. "She lunged at my side, her hand brushing my holster. I had to grab her arm to stop her. It was a split-second decision." Gasps echoed from the gallery. A man in the crowd muttered, "That's not what she said." Judge Thompson's gavel struck, ordering the court. Whitaker turned to the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." Marcus rose, his movements deliberate. His eyes locked on Harper like a predator sizing up prey. "Your Honor, permission to cross-examine." "Granted," Judge Thompson said, her gaze piercing as she watched Harper squirm. Marcus approached the stand, his voice calm but laced with steel. "Officer Harper, you've testified again that Ms. Grant reached for your weapon. Yet you've provided no evidence, no fingerprints, no footage, no corroborating witnesses. Just your word, correct?" Harper's jaw tightened, his voice barely steady. "Yes. It happened too fast for evidence." "Too fast," Marcus echoed, pacing slowly before the jury. "But not too fast for you to notice her hand brushing your holster. In 12 years on the force, how many times have you faced such a threat?" Harper hesitated, his eyes darting to Whitaker for salvation. "It's rare, but it happens." "Rare," Marcus said, his tone sharpening. "Like your body camera malfunctioning at the exact moment of this alleged assault? How often does that happen during an arrest?" Harper's face flushed, his voice rising defensively. "It was a coincidence. Equipment fails." Marcus stopped pacing, facing Harper directly. "A coincidence," he said, his voice dropping to a chilling calm. "Or a cover-up. You approached a woman on a public sidewalk, demanded her ID without cause, and when she asked why, you lost control. Isn't that the truth?" Harper's hands clenched the arms of the chair. "No. She was defiant, uncooperative." "Uncooperative?" Marcus cut in, his voice rising to a crescendo. "Or did she dare to question your authority? She asked, 'Have I broken any laws?' and you didn't like it, did you?" The room was deathly silent, the jury leaning forward, their eyes boring into Harper. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Marcus pressed, relentless. "You grabbed her arm, slammed her against your car, and lied to justify it. Why? Because you thought no one would believe her over you." Whitaker leapt to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor." "Badgering the witness." "Sustained," Judge Thompson said, though her expression suggested she was as invested as the jury. "Mr. Lee, move on." Marcus nodded, his voice softening but no less piercing. "Officer Harper, you said Ms. Grant made you feel threatened. Do you know who she is?" Harper blinked, caught off guard. "She's just a civilian." Marcus turned to the jury, a spark in his eyes. "Just a civilian. We'll see about that." He stepped back. No further questions. Harper stepped down, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of dread. His colleagues in the back row exchanged worried glances, their loyalty to him crumbling. Olivia leaned toward Marcus, her voice a whisper. "He's breaking. Time to bring it home." Judge Thompson's voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Lee, does the defense have additional evidence?" Marcus stood, his voice ringing with purpose. "Yes, Your Honor. We submit video evidence recorded by a bystander during the arrest." Whitaker shot to his feet, his face paling. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defense should have disclosed this earlier." "Sit down, Mr. Whitaker," Judge Thompson said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Let's see the footage." The bailiff inserted a USB drive into the courtroom's media system. The screen flickered to life, and the room fell into a suffocating silence. The video was shaky, partially obscured by a car window, but the audio was crystal clear. Harper's voice rang out sharp and commanding. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Olivia's voice followed, calm but firm. "I'm not resisting. Let go of my arm." The crowd watched, riveted, as Harper shoved Olivia against the patrol car. His words were unmistakable, dripping with venom. "People like you don't get to question me." The video cut off, but the impact lingered like a thunderclap. The courtroom erupted, gasps and murmurs drowning out Judge Thompson's gavel. "Order. I will have order," she barked, her face darkening with fury. Harper sank into his chair, his hands trembling, his eyes fixed on the floor. His colleagues in the back row shifted uncomfortably, one shaking his head in disbelief. Marcus turned to the jury, his voice steady but charged with conviction. "This is the truth Officer Harper didn't want you to see, but we're not done." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle, then addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we call Ms. Olivia Grant to the stand." Olivia rose, her steps measured, each one radiating authority. She walked to the witness stand, her presence silencing the room. As she sat, Her posture was that of a warrior. Back straight, hands resting lightly on the railing. Eyes locked on the jury. Marcus approached, his voice clear and purposeful. "Ms. Grant, you've heard the accusations against you: resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, attempting to seize a weapon. Are these true?" "No," Olivia said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "They are lies crafted to silence me." Marcus nodded, stepping closer to the jury. "Tell us in your own words what happened that night." Olivia took a slow breath, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on the jury. "I was walking home after visiting a colleague. I stopped to check my phone for directions when Officer Harper confronted me. He demanded my ID. Flashlight in my face, no explanation. I asked if I'd broken any laws. He didn't answer. Instead, he accused me of being uncooperative." The jury listened, rapt as she continued. "When I repeated my question, he grabbed my arm. I told him to let go. He refused, saying, 'People like you need to learn respect.' When I tried to pull free, he slammed me against his car, cuffed me, and claimed I assaulted him." The crowd murmured, anger flickering in their eyes. Marcus's voice rose slightly. "Did you threaten him in any way?" "No," Olivia said, her tone unwavering. "I was calm, controlled. I asked for my rights, and he punished me for it." Marcus paused, letting her words sink in, then asked, "Ms. Grant, the prosecution has painted you as an ordinary civilian who turned violent. Is there more to your story the court should know?" Olivia's eyes met his, a flicker of steel beneath her calm exterior. She leaned forward, her voice steady but charged with power. "Yes, I am Colonel Olivia Grant, retired United States Air Force Special Operations. For 22 years, I led covert missions in the world's most dangerous regions. I've faced threats most can't imagine, and I've done it with discipline, precision, and honor." The courtroom froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a stunned silence. Judge Thompson's gavel hung in midair, her eyes wide with astonishment. Harper's face drained of color, his hands shaking as he gripped the table. His colleagues in the back row stared, mouths agape, their loyalty to him shattered. Marcus stepped forward, his voice rising with conviction. "Colonel Grant, as a special operations officer, you were trained to handle high-pressure situations. Did you use the training during your encounter with Officer Harper?" "Yes," Olivia said, her voice firm. "I stayed calm, assessed the situation, and responded without violence. I knew he wasn't a threat to my safety, just to my dignity, and I refused to let him strip me of that." The jury's eyes were locked on her, a mix of awe and anger. Not at her, but at the system that had allowed this. Marcus pressed, "Did you ever attempt to harm Officer Harper or reach for his weapon?" "No," Olivia said, her voice like iron. "My training taught me to neutralize threats, not create them." His claim is a lie to cover his abuse of power. The room erupted, louder this time, as spectators clapped despite the judge's gavel. "Order," Judge Thompson shouted, though her voice carried a note of respect as she looked at Olivia. Marcus turned to the jury, his voice a clarion call. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard Officer Harper's story, and now you've seen the truth, video evidence, a pattern of lies, and the testimony of a woman who has served this nation with honor. The question is simple: who do you believe?" Whitaker remained seated, his face ashen, his hands gripping his notes as if they could anchor him. Harper stared straight ahead, his body rigid, his world collapsing. Olivia stepped down from the stand, her head high, and returned to her seat. She leaned toward Marcus, her voice a whisper. "The wall's down, Marcus. Now we rebuild." The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of outrage and admiration. A woman in the gallery stood, clapping defiantly, sparking others to join until the room was a sea of applause. Judge Thompson's gavel struck repeatedly, but even she couldn't suppress the tide of emotion. Harper's colleagues slipped out quietly, their heads bowed, leaving him alone at the plaintiff's table. Marcus placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder, his voice soft but fierce. "You did it, Colonel. They see you now." Olivia's eyes glinted with resolve. "They see the truth, Marcus. That's what matters." Judge Thompson leaned forward, her voice heavy with finality. "We will move to closing arguments. Both sides, prepare your statements carefully." The courtroom held its breath. the weight of Olivia's testimony hanging in the air like a beacon. Harper sat, a broken man, his lies exposed, his authority stripped bare. Olivia, unbowed, was no longer just a defendant, she was a symbol of resilience, a force that had turned the tide of justice. The courtroom pulsed with a heavy silence, the echo of Olivia Grant's testimony still reverberating like a struck bell. The air was thick, charged with the weight of truth laid bare. Spectators sat riveted, their earlier murmurs replaced by a hushed awe. The back row, once a bastion of Officer Daniel Harper's colleagues, was nearly empty. Only 2 officers remained, their faces grim, their loyalty to him shattered. The jury's eyes darted between Olivia and Harper, their expressions a mix of respect for her and disdain for him. Olivia sat at the defense table, her navy blazer crisp, her posture unyielding. Her brown eyes were calm but fierce, a quiet storm beneath her composed exterior. Beside her, Marcus Lee clutched his notes, his earlier nerves transformed into a steely determination. He leaned toward her, voice low. "You've turned this around, Olivia. Harper's done. What now?" Her gaze flicked to Harper, then back to Marcus, her voice steady. "We seal the victory, Marcus. Make sure the truth sticks." Harper slumped at the plaintiff's table, his police uniform now a mockery of authority. His face was ashen, sweat beading on his brow, his hands trembling as they gripped the table's edge. The confident facade he'd worn on the first day was gone, replaced by a man staring into the abyss of his own making. He avoided Olivia's gaze, but her presence loomed over him, unyielding. Judge Clara Thompson's gavel struck, commanding attention. Her silver hair gleamed under the lights, her gray eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. "Order," she said, her voice carrying a gravitas that silenced the last whispers. "Mr. Whitaker, does the prosecution wish to proceed?" Prosecutor James Whitaker rose slowly, his tailored suit unable to mask the strain in his posture. His usual sharpness was dulled, his voice tinged with resignation. "Your Honor, we request to recall Officer Harper for redirect." Harper dragged himself to the stand, his steps heavy, as if each one carried the weight of his unraveling lies. He sat, adjusting the microphone with shaking hands, his eyes fixed on the floor. Whitaker approached, his tone cautious, almost pleading. "Officer Harper, you've heard Colonel Grant's testimony and the video evidence. Do you have anything to add to clarify your actions?" Harper's voice was barely audible, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. I stand by my account." She was uncooperative. "I acted to maintain order." Whitaker pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. "And the video? The words we heard, people like you don't get to question me, how do you explain that?" Harper's eyes darted to the jury, then back to Whitaker. "It's out of context. The video doesn't show everything." She was defiant, made me feel threatened. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. A woman in the gallery scoffed softly, "He's still lying." Judge Thompson's gavel tapped. "Quiet." Whitaker's shoulders sagged, his voice flat. "No further questions, Your Honor." Marcus stood, his movements confident, his eyes locked on Harper. "Your Honor, permission to cross-examine." "Granted," Judge Thompson said, her gaze pinning Harper like a specimen under glass. Marcus approached, his voice calm but cutting. "Officer Harper, you claim Colonel Grant was defiant, yet we've seen video evidence showing her calm. Asking a simple question, have I broken any laws? You didn't answer, did you?" Harper swallowed, his voice weak. I told her to comply." "You told her to learn respect," Marcus corrected, his tone sharp. "You grabbed her arm, slammed her against your car, and lied about her reaching for your weapon. Why? Because she dared to question you." Harper's hands clenched the chair, his voice rising in a last gasp of defiance. "I was doing my job. She challenged me." "Challenged you?" Marcus interrupted, his voice booming. "She's a retired Air Force colonel who's faced dangers you can't imagine, and you call her asking a question a challenge? Does it embarrass you, officer, to know the woman you tried to intimidate has more honor in her little finger than you've shown in your entire career?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs, a few spectators clapping before the judge's gavel slammed. "Order." Harper's face crumpled, his eyes glistening with humiliation. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Marcus turned to the jury, his voice steady but passionate. "You've seen the truth video evidence, Colonel Grant's testimony, and a pattern of lies from a man who thought his badge made him untouchable. This isn't just about one night. It's about accountability, about ensuring those sworn to protect don't become oppressors. Whitaker objected weakly. Your Honor, this is inflammatory. Overruled. Judge Thompson said, her voice firm. Mr. Lee, conclude your questioning. Marcus nodded, facing Harper one last time. Officer Harper, do you have anything to say to Colonel Grant for the pain and humiliation you caused? Harper's head dropped, his voice a whisper. I was doing my job. Marcus stepped back, his voice cold. No further questions. Harper stumbled back to his seat, his shoulders hunched, a broken man. The remaining officers in the back row looked away, their silence a condemnation. Olivia leaned toward Marcus, her voice soft. He's finished. Now we make it mean something. Judge Thompson's voice broke the tension. Mr. Lee, does the defense have further evidence? Marcus stood, holding a file aloft. Yes, Your Honor. We submit Officer Harper's personnel record, detailing multiple complaints of excessive force and racial bias. Complaints buried by his department until today. Whitaker leapt up, his voice shrill. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. Overruled, Judge Thompson said, her tone icy. The court will review the documents. Marcus handed the file to the bailiff, then addressed the jury. This isn't just about Colonel Grant. It's about a system that lets men like Harper abuse power without consequence. Today, you can demand better. The jury nodded, their faces resolute. Spectators whispered, some wiping tears, others clenching fists. A young man in the gallery stood, shouting justice for Olivia, before the bailiff escorted him out. The room buzzed with suppressed energy, the tide turning decisively. Judge Thompson leaned forward, her voice heavy. We will move to closing arguments tomorrow. Both sides, be prepared. Her gavel struck and the room exhaled, the tension easing but not dissipating. Olivia rose, her presence commanding as she walked past Harper, who shrank in his chair. Marcus followed, his voice low. You were incredible up there. The jury's with you. Olivia's eyes softened, but her resolve held firm. It's not about me, Marcus. It's about everyone who's been silenced. We're not done yet. Outside, the crowd surged toward Olivia, reporters thrusting microphones forward. She paused on the courthouse steps, the setting sun casting her in gold. This fight isn't over, she said, her voice carrying over the noise. But today we showed that truth can't be buried. Spectators cheered, their applause a thunderous affirmation. Marcus stood beside her, pride in his eyes. Harper lingered in the courthouse doorway, alone, his career in ruins. The truth had won this round, but Olivia knew the war for justice was far from over. The courthouse stood resolute under a golden dawn, its stone walls glowing as the final day of Olivia Grant's trial dawned. Outside, a swelling crowd spilled across the steps. Reporters with cameras flashing, activists waving signs proclaiming, "Truth wins," and townsfolk united in hope. Inside, the courtroom was a crucible of anticipation, every bench packed, the air humming with the weight of justice on the brink. Spectators leaned forward, their eyes fixed on Olivia, who sat at the defense table, her navy blazer pristine, her posture a pillar of strength. Her brown eyes shone with quiet determination, a lighthouse in the storm's wake. Beside her, Marcus Lee, now a seasoned advocate shaped by the trial's fire, adjusted his tie with steady hands. His youthful nerves had given way to a fierce resolve. He leaned toward Olivia, voice low. We've got them. Olivia, the jury's with us. What's your mindset? Olivia's gaze was unwavering, her voice calm but charged. We're not just closing a case, Marcus. We're lighting a spark. Let's make it burn bright. Across the room, Officer Daniel Harper sat alone at the plaintiff's table, a husk of the swaggering man who'd entered days ago. His police uniform sagged on his slumped frame, his face pale, eyes sunken with defeat. His hands lay limp, the fight drained from him. The back row, once a wall of his colleagues' support, was empty, their absence a damning judgment. Judge Clara Thompson swept in, her silver hair gleaming, her gray eyes cutting through the room's tension. The gavel struck, sharp and commanding. Court is in session, she declared. We proceed with closing arguments in the state versus Olivia Grant. Prosecutor James Whitaker rose, his tailored suit unable to hide the weariness in his stance. His voice, once razor-sharp, was hollow, a man conceding defeat. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, facing jurors who met him with cold stares. This case involves difficult choices. Officer Harper acted under pressure, believing he was ensuring safety. Miss Grant's resistance, her questioning, escalated the encounter. "We urge you to weigh the evidence, not emotions, and find her guilty." His words landed like ash, sparking no fire. Whitaker sat, avoiding Harper's gaze, his hands clenching his notes as if they could shield him from failure. A spectator whispered, "He's out of moves." Marcus stood, buttoning his jacket, his presence filling the room. He faced the jury, his voice a blend of conviction and passion. "This case isn't difficult. It's clear as day. Colonel Olivia Grant, a retired Air Force hero who served this nation for 22 years, was targeted for one reason. She dared to ask why. Why was a black woman on a sidewalk treated as a threat? Why was she grabbed, slammed against a car, and slandered by a man who swore to serve?" He pointed to Olivia, who sat tall. Her eyes locked on the jury. "You've seen the truth video evidence exposing Harper's aggression, his own words betraying him. People like you don't get to question me. You've heard Colonel Grant's testimony backed by her unblemished record, and you've seen Harper's trail of buried complaints for excessive force and bias." Marcus's voice soared, resonating with purpose. "This is about more than one night. It's about accountability, about dismantling a system that protects abusers like Harper. You hold the power to say, no one is above justice. Find Colonel Grant not guilty and demand change for every voice silenced." The jury's faces hardened with resolve, some nodding. Spectators erupted in applause. "Define Judge Thompson's gavel." "Order," she snapped, though her eyes flickered with admiration for Marcus's fire. The crowd hushed, but their energy pulsed, a tide of hope. Judge Thompson addressed the jury, her voice steady. "You've heard the arguments. Retire to deliberate and return with a verdict." The jurors filed out, their steps purposeful, their expressions a mix of solemnity and conviction. The courtroom exhaled, anticipation coiling like a spring. Olivia and Marcus stepped into the hallway where supporters mobbed them. A young woman with a "Justice Now" sign approached Olivia, eyes shining. "You're my hero," she said. Olivia smiled, gripping her shoulder. "You're the hero. Keep speaking out." Marcus watched, then turned to her. "Think they'll deliver?" Olivia's voice was firm. "They'll do more than deliver, Marcus. They'll roar." Hours dragged, each minute taut with expectation. Olivia sat on a hallway bench, hands clasped, her calm a stark contrast to the restless crowd. Marcus paced, checking his watch. "They're taking forever." Olivia's hands steadied him. "Truce takes time. Let it breathe." The bailiff's voice pierced the hum. "The jury has a verdict." The courtroom filled in a rush, every seat claimed, the air electric. Olivia and Marcus returned to their table, her face serene yet fierce. Harper sat, head bowed, braced for the fall. Judge Thompson entered, her gavel striking. "The jury will read the verdict." The forewoman, a woman with warm eyes and a steady voice, stood, unfolding a paper. "In the case of the state versus Olivia Grant," she said, her words ringing, "we find the defendant not guilty on all charges." The room detonated, cheers, sobs, and applause swallowing the judge's gavel. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Marcus beamed, gripping her arm. "We did it, Colonel." The forewoman raised her voice, cutting through the chaos. "We further recommend a thorough investigation into Officer Harper's conduct and the department's failure to address his prior misconduct." The crowd roared louder, a wave of triumph. Judge Thompson nodded, her voice grave. "The court will pursue this recommendation. Officer Harper, secure legal counsel immediately. This is not over." Harper sat, a broken statue, his career in ashes. Olivia stood, her presence a beacon, and faced the jury, her nod a silent gratitude. They returned it, a shared vow of justice. Outside, the sun blazed, bathing Olivia in light as she stepped onto the courthouse steps. Reporters surged, but she raised a hand, her voice cutting through the din. "This isn't my victory, it's ours. It's for every person judged by their skin, silenced by power. I fought for this nation, and I'll fight for its heart until justice is more than a word. It's a promise." The crowd thundered. Signs aloft, applause a symphony. Marcus stood beside her, pride radiating. "You're unstoppable, Colonel." Olivia's gaze pierced the horizon. "We all are. We just need to rise." Months later, Harper was fired, charged with perjury and misconduct. The department faced reforms under public pressure. Olivia resumed her quiet life, but her story ignited a movement. Speeches, rallies, laws proposed in her name. She spoke to crowds, her message clear: the truth is your power. Use it. The final image, Olivia under a crimson sunset, her silhouette unbreakable, her voice a call. Share your fight. Make justice real. The story of Olivia Grande is a powerful lesson in resilience, truth, and the fight against systemic injustice. As a retired Air Force colonel, Olivia faced a false accusation of assaulting Officer Daniel Harper, a man who abused his authority to silence her for daring to question his actions. Her trial exposed not just Harper's lies but a deeper truth: prejudice and power can distort justice, yet courage and evidence can dismantle even the strongest facades. Olivia's unwavering composure, backed by her military discipline, turned a courtroom into a battleground for accountability. She didn't just defend herself. She fought for every person marginalized by a system that often protects the powerful. Her victory reminds us that truth is a weapon, but it requires boldness to wield. We must challenge injustice, demand transparency, and amplify silenced voices. Olivia's story teaches that justice isn't given, it's claimed through persistence and unity. This tale is a call to action. Stand up, speak out, and hold power accountable. Let Olivia's courage inspire you to question, to fight, and to believe in the power of truth. Want more stories that ignite change and uncover resilience? Like this video to show your support, share to spread the message, and subscribe to our channel for gripping tales of justice and redemption. Hit the bell icon to never miss an update. Join our community, and together, let's champion truth in every story.